Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad to have you back here again for a new episode. And if you were new here, hello and welcome. Please do stick around to see what kind of shocking true crime story I have for you today. And also please subscribe to the channel for more true crime content. Now, before I get into the episode, I would just like to give out my channel disclaimer, and that is my channel is not meant to show any disrespect towards the victims or the families of the victims that I talk about in these videos. The information that I share with my audience is research taken from different sources of the internet and compiled into one video. And the main purpose of my channel is for educational and awareness purposes of the different types of crimes we face on a daily basis. And the content warning is that in this case, I will be talking about murder and also graphic descriptions of criminal acts against another human being. So if you are sensitive to that kind of content, then viewer discretion is very much advised. Alright guys, I hope everything is good on your side and that you are ready for this week's episode. And also before I go on, for those of you who did wish my research partner well, on my previous episode, I passed on your wishes and she is seriously grateful to you guys for all of your nice comments. And she asked me to say thank you to you guys on her behalf for your amazing comments. All right, so let me get into this week's episode, and I'm not going to lie to you guys. It gets really graphic, so I will leave out a timestamp for you if you don't want to hear those parts. When I get to the graphic parts, I will leave out a timestamp for you if you don't want to hear those details. But right now, sit back, relax, and let me tell you all about the murder of Sandra Malcolm. Sandra Malcolm was born in Scotland in 1941, so she was born during the Second World War. She went on to get married and also had 2 daughters of her own, and then in 1981, she and her family decided to move from Scotland and they moved to South Africa in Cape Town. And this is where her daughters would basically get to attend school, grow up, and also build lives for themselves. And another person we're going to be talking about in this case is a young woman by the name of Cherie Prince. Now, I couldn't really find a lot of information regarding Sandra's childhood and how she grew up, during those times of the Second World War, how life was for her and her family. But I did manage to find quite a bit of information on Cherie Prince. So you're going to be hearing a lot more about her in the next few minutes than I wish you could have about Sandra. Cherie Prince was born in 1997, and she was born in a very small town of Citrusdale, about 200 kilometers away from where Sandra Malcolm and her family were living. And Cherie had quite an unpleasant childhood. And there are different versions of the kind of childhood she had, but the bottom line is she did have quite an unpleasant childhood, and she was also described as a very shy and also withdrawn child. Now, the kind of place that Cherie grew up in isn't really the kind of place that you would call suitable for young kids to grow up in. Even to this day, it is still a very poor area, and the people living in that place only have the option of working seasonal jobs in nearby farms around the town of Citrusdale, because job opportunities are very scarce in that town. And another unfortunate part about this town is that it is riddled with substance abuse. There's a lot of drug use in that town. So this is to give you an idea of the kind of place that she grew up in. When Cherie was in her young teenage years, she was already having run-ins with the authorities, because when she was just 13 years old, she was arrested for the sexual assault of an 8-year-old boy. It was revealed that when the boy was sitting on her lap, Cherie started touching his private area inappropriately, and when the boy's parents found out about this, they decided to get her arrested. But there isn't a lot of information out there about whether she was charged or whether she was found guilty or if they decided to let her go because she was a minor. But bottom line is she was starting to have her own run-ins with the law at this point. But even after this, she still kept on breaking the law. And as a matter of fact, she started breaking into people's homes and stealing from them. And then when she was just 15 years old, she started getting addicted to crystal methamphetamine. So her teenage years were starting to go downhill very fast. And her constantly taking this drug ended up having some serious behavioral and psychological effects on her. Then when Cherie was just 16 years old, she was only in the 10th grade when she decided to quit school and never went back. And it's a bit unclear of what she was up to in those 2 years between age 16 and 18. It is known, however, that when she turned 18, that's when she decided to leave her parents' home and also left her town of Citrusdale, and she made her way to Cape Town. Then on April 14th in 2015, that's when she got to Mitchell's Plain in Cape Town. And when she arrived, she actually broke into a house that seemed to have no one inside of it, and she got inside and stole a few items. And then again, she broke into another empty house, but when she broke the window, a neighbor heard the commotion and decided to call the police. And when the police came by, Cherie was arrested again. And then once she was arrested, this time the police decided to take her fingerprints, get them processed, and then put them in the system. And then she told them that she only broke into the house because she was looking for somewhere to sleep. Then after this, the officers wondered if maybe they couldn't get any family members of hers involved in this so they could take her home. Because I'm thinking at this point they were like, maybe she's a bit too young because she was still 18, a bit too young to be having trouble with the law, so instead they thought maybe she just needed some help. And this is when she told the officers that she has an aunt who lives in Steinberg, and she directed them to her house. And when they got there, her aunt said that she was actually surprised that Cherie was anywhere nearby. But hearing that she got arrested wasn't really something that was new to her. But as soon as she did find out that she was arrested, she told the officers that, you know what, Cherie actually has been taking drugs from a very young age, and they have been influencing her to exhibit some very erratic behavior. And so after knowing about this, the officers decided that they would let the people know, the people that she robbed, they would let them know of her situation and try to see if they cannot get them to drop the charges laid against her and just have her sent back home to get some help in Citrusdale. Then on the next day, Cherie was released from the police custody and she was now in the care of her aunt. And the police actually wanted her to promise that she would have Cherie sent back home to her parents in Citrusdale. But once Cherie was with her aunt, it didn't even take a full day before she snuck out of the house and left. So clearly she had no intentions of going back home. And after this, Cherie just kept walking around until eventually she came across a family friend's house and decided to sleep there for the night of April 17th in 2015. And according to Cherie herself, she said on that night she decided to drink a lot of alcohol and therefore got very intoxicated. And when she got back, she decided to go to her room and go to sleep. But for some reason, someone else who was living in the house decided to come into her room and also sleep next to her. And this actually got her irritated and she decided to just pack everything she had and she left the house. But as soon as she was walking out, she knocked down a pot of very hot food and it fell down on her foot and she got burned. Then for the next few hours until dawn was closing by, so she was walking in the middle of the night, she ended up walking all the way out of Steinberg and she got into a nearby suburb known as Lakeside, which is nearby to an area known as Marina de Gama, which is where 74-year-old Sandra Malcolm had decided to come and live for the rest of her life after she had sadly lost her husband in 2013. And this senior citizen was living by herself in a complex property known as Capri Mews. And even though the passing of her husband back in 2013 had quite a toll on her, she was gradually recovering from her loss. She was now making dresses, designing cards. She was also volunteering at the hospice charity shop, and also a few times a week she would get into the gym and have a few sessions of working out. So she was trying to get her life back on track. And also she and her daughter also enjoyed spending a lot of time together. And as a matter of fact, on April 18th in 2015, they had plans to go on lunch together. However, these plans wouldn't happen because this would be the day that Sandra Malcolm would sadly lose her life when Cherie Prince broke into her home. According to Cherie, she was just walking around when she came across the complex property of Capri Mews, and she also noticed that one of the townhouses actually had a window that was open on the side of it. And this was the house of 74-year-old Sandra Malcolm. And so Cherie climbed over the gate and then got into the house through the open window. And she said she was walking around the house when she came across Sandra Malcolm, who was just laying down on her bed. And once Sandra was aware that there was an intruder in her house, she said she would call the police if that person didn't leave. But Cherie told her that she didn't want any trouble, she just needed some help. After this, Cherie showed Sandra her injured foot, and once Sandra took a look at her foot, she decided not to call the police. Instead, she took out some disinfectant and decided to wash the foot, and also put some bandage on it as well. And then after this, they went to the kitchen where Sandra made them some toast and tea, and they sat down and had some toast and tea together. But then when Sandra started saying that she had to call Cherie an ambulance, Cherie did not want that to happen. As a matter of fact, she started thinking that the only reason that Sandra wanted to do this was so that the ambulance would also come over with the police, and so Cherie would get arrested. Cherie also started getting paranoid with the tea that she was drinking, thinking that maybe Sandra had actually drugged her tea so she would pass out and then wake up in police custody. So because of this, she panicked and then threatened Sandra and told her that she would stab her if she ever called an ambulance. She stood up and then went to the drawer, and then she picked out a knife out of the drawer. And once Sandra saw this, they started struggling for the knife and fighting over it, but eventually Cherie would stab Sandra in the chest, and then the 74-year-old woman would unfortunately fall to the ground. Alright guys, I'm about to talk about the graphic details that I spoke about at the beginning of the video. So if you don't want to hear the graphic details, I will just leave a timestamp for you over here so you can know where to skip to. Cherie said after stabbing Sandra in the chest, she wanted to leave, but when she saw that she was actually still alive, she went to go look for a bigger knife, and then when she got it, she started to decapitate her. She also took Sandra's phone and sent a text message to her dad saying that she's in trouble, she needs some help, but her dad never replied to that text. So now that she had decapitated this poor innocent woman, she also decided to try to cut off her arms, and after she did that, she also cut open her stomach and then took out her intestines. And then after that, she tried to cut off her legs, but this proved to be a lot more difficult than she thought it would be, and so she tried to look for an axe anywhere on the property, but apparently she never found one. She then took the cut off remains of Sandra Malcolm and she put them in a bin that she took from the courtyard. And it was actually revealed that Cherie said she wanted to live in Sandra's home because she thought that in her mind, Sandra was old and had lived her life. So basically even her death didn't mean anything to Cherie. But after realizing that the house was now completely covered in blood, the kitchen to be specific was not completely covered in blood, she knew that she couldn't live there and she decided to run away, and then she went back to Steinberg to her aunt's house. And you know what is also heartbreaking was that on the day of Sandra Malcolm's murder on April 18th in 2015, her first great-grandson was actually born. And so when her family was trying to contact her to tell her about the good news, they couldn't find her. And after multiple tries, her grandson decided to go over to her house to go and check in on her. And of course, he would only find nothing but a bloody scene. And after seeing all of this, he quickly decided to go and call the police. And then in no time, the police and forensic investigators were on the scene trying to analyze everything. A neighbor described Sandra as a very friendly woman, and he also added to how strange it was that no one heard anything. And as a matter of fact, he walked past her house when he was going to church at 10 a.m. that day, but he didn't hear any struggle, he didn't hear anything at all. But then when he got back from church later on, he only saw the police surrounding the place, and they told him that Sandra had been killed. It was reported that the neighbors said the last time she was seen was on that day of Saturday on 18th April in 2015. And then on the next day of April 19th in 2015, the police officers and forensic investigators were still spending hours analyzing the crime scene, trying to get more evidence out of Sandra's home. And they still had no idea what the motive behind her murder was. And they still had no idea what the actual cause of her death was as well. But of course, as you may have guessed by now, Cherie left a lot of her fingerprints all over the crime scene, and since she was arrested before and the police took her fingerprints and put them in the system, it didn't really take that long for them to find a match. And so the fingerprints that were found on the crime scene showed a positive match to the fingerprints of Cherie Prince. And by this time, Cherie was actually home in Citrusdale. It turns out that when she went back to her aunt's house in Steinberg, she was only going to ask for help to be able to get back home. And both her parents and her aunt said nothing seemed out of the ordinary with her. It didn't seem like something had just happened. It didn't seem like she had just killed anyone. She was just as normal as can be. But then when the police arrived at her family home in Citrusdale to arrest her, that is when her family knew that she had done something terribly wrong. And when she got arrested, the police also found a couple of items that belonged to Sandra Malcolm. So it became quite obvious that they had the person that they were looking for. And the people actually wanted to believe, or they refused to believe, that someone as small in physical appearance as Cherie could have done something like this all by herself. They wanted to believe that she had to have had someone help her out to carry out such a heinous act. But all the evidence that was collected on the crime scene, including all of the DNA evidence and the fingerprint evidence, all pointed out that Cherie Prince was the only person on the crime scene who committed this crime. So she had no one help her out that day. And then after she got arrested, it didn't really take long for her to give out a full confession to the murder of Sandra Malcolm. But it would take another 3 years before she would make an appearance in court. So she was in police custody the entire time. And when she finally got in front of a judge, it was brought to the court's attention that her family claimed that Cherie had some mental health issues. And also when looking at the nature of the crime and her strange behavior in court, as well as the fact that it was believed that she didn't fully understand the severity of her actions, the court was convinced that she had to undergo some psychological evaluations. And even though at first the evaluation wasn't easy because Cherie didn't want to talk to the psychologist, eventually she did open up and talk about the murder of Sandra Malcolm. And even though it was concluded that she was fit to stand trial, it was also concluded that she showed signs of antisocial behavior, and another psychologist also said that she had signs of being a psychopath. It was also revealed that she confessed that she always had thoughts of killing someone from a very young age, since she was about just 10 years old. And so with that being said, the psychologist recommended that her risk of killing again should be taken strongly under consideration and she should be incarcerated. It was also reported that even though Sandra had been dismembered, her body also showed signs of 24 stab wounds. So this was actually an overkill, that Cherie would stab her and then dismember her body. And another thing that was found was that Sandra was most likely alive when she was decapitated. So you can tell that Cherie Prince was just an absolute monster when she killed this poor innocent woman. And since she was deemed fit to stand trial and also admitted guilt to the crime, this meant everything could just go straight to the sentencing. However, this also had a lot of delays because they just couldn't find anyone to come and testify on her behalf. Not even her own father wanted to come and testify, and her uncle as well ended up changing his mind after he had decided that he was going to come and testify for her. And so the defense kept on asking for more time from the judge to get more people to try and come and testify for her, but eventually the judge put a stop to it and the trial had to come to an end. So in 2018, Cherie Prince was found guilty of the murder of 74-year-old Sandra Malcolm, and she was sentenced to life in prison and was also given an additional sentence for breaking and entering. It was also concluded that she had to serve a minimum of 25 years before being considered qualifying for parole. Sandra's daughter Allison said that it didn't really surprise her that her mom decided to help out Cherie because that's just the kind of person she was. She was full of life, she was vibrant, and she always wanted to help out wherever she could. And like I said, Sandra was found by her grandson, and he said that what he saw that day will forever leave him scarred for the rest of his life. He now has scars that will never heal. Allison also pleaded with the court that they give Cherie the most harshest sentence, and she also said that if she ever became qualified for a parole, the Malcolm family would always be there to make sure that she stays behind bars where she belongs, because their lives will never be the same again because of her. But yeah, guys, that was the case of Sandra Malcolm. My heart completely goes out to the family for their loss, and I hope they found some sort of closure, knowing that the person who did this is behind bars and they will be there for a very long time. And I also hope that Sandra Malcolm's soul is resting in peace and that she's in a better place wherever she is. And that is all that I have for you guys on this week's episode. Please do let me know what you think about it in the comments. And if you did enjoy the episode, please do help me out by leaving it a big thumbs up by pressing the like button. And thank you guys for hanging out with me today. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to support my content. And again, if you are new here, please be part of the family and subscribe to the channel for more true crime content. With that being said, I will see you guys in the next episode. Take care of yourselves, enjoy the rest of your day, and until next time, cheers.